All right, so we're back and ready to jump into another deep dive. You ready for this?
Absolutely I am. Let's do it.
Awesome. Okay, so today we're going to be taking a closer look at Chapter 2 of Bola Agbula's Impact, the Effect of Momentum.
Okay.
You got a chance to check this out yet?
I have, yeah. This chapter, your assignment requires momentum. It's really powerful stuff.
Hey.
It kind of picks up where Chapter 1 left off, you know?
It does. It does. It starts off with this really thought-provoking quote. It says, the two most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you discover why you were born.
Yeah, that's a big one, right?
It is. It is. And it gets us thinking about, you know, that whole idea of purpose, which is what Chapter 1 was all about. But then this chapter takes it a step further, right?
Yeah, it does. It says it's not enough just to know your purpose. You got to actually do something with it.
Exactly. You need that energy, that drive to make it happen. And that's where the momentum comes in.
Right.
And to illustrate this idea, Agbula uses the story of Joshua from the book of Joshua. What were your thoughts on that story?
Well, it's interesting because Joshua, he was, chosen by God to conquer these specific lands. And he had some crazy success early on, like conquered 31 rulers in just 7 years.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, but later on we find out that he didn't actually fully complete his objective. There were still these unconquered territories left.
So even with, divine backing, he still fell short.
Yeah, it's like he lost momentum somewhere along the way. And I think that's a really important lesson for all of us. Like, even when we're experiencing success, we can't just coast. We got to keep pushing forward.
You got to keep that momentum going. Okay, so let's talk about this idea of momentum a little more. I mean, it's a physics concept, right?
Yeah, exactly. In physics, momentum is defined as mass times velocity.
Okay.
So Agbula, he takes that concept and applies it to personal growth. He says our mass is like our knowledge, our skills, our character, and then velocity is that consistent action towards our goals.
So we need both. We need the substance and the movement to really make an impact.
Exactly. And, in Joshua's case, it seems like maybe he was lacking a little bit of that velocity in the long run.
Yeah, I can see that. So how do we build this momentum then? Like, what are some practical tools we can use?
Well, Agbula talks about a couple of really interesting tools. One of them is visualization.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that. Isn't that like creating mental pictures of your goals?
Exactly. It's about transforming those abstract ideas into concrete images. Agbula gives an example of visualizing love as a parent and a child embracing. It's like you make the concept more tangible and relatable.
I see.
And that can help with problem solving and boosting creativity.
So it's kind of like mentally rehearsing for success.
Exactly. And then another tool he talks about is logical analysis.
Okay.
This is about breaking things down, examining the relationships between different parts, and using reason and evidence to reach conclusions.
So it's a more methodical approach.
Yeah. It is. And Agbula makes the point that even God, as the ultimate creator, he works in a systematic way. So it's like we should be striving for that same level of intentionality.
Right. So it's not just about blindly charging ahead.
Yeah.
You got to be strategic and thoughtful.
Exactly.
I like that. And remember that whole concept of mass we were talking about?
Yeah.
Well, Agbula uses a really great analogy to illustrate how important it is.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Think about weight classes in boxing. Just like a heavier boxer packs a bigger punch, building our mass, our knowledge, skills, character, that increases our potential for impact.
That's a great analogy. It really makes you think.
Yeah, so how do we go about building this mass then?
Well, it takes a conscious effort to learn and grow in the areas that are related to our purpose. So that might mean reading books, taking courses, finding mentors, anything that expands our knowledge and skills.
So we're like adding fuel to that fire.
Exactly. And then there's this great quote from the Apostle Paul that Agbula brings in. He says, I don't run without a goal. And I don't box by just shadow boxing, hitting nothing but air. It's about making sure our efforts are actually hitting the target.
I like that. So are you going to tell me about Usain Bolt now?
I am. Because he is a perfect example of someone who mastered both mass and velocity.
Right. He made it look so effortless.
He did, but it was years and years of dedication and hard work. It wasn't just talent. It was that consistent effort that built his momentum.
That makes sense. So we've got this idea of mass and velocity working together to create momentum, and we've seen how it played out or didn't play out in Joshua's story.
Yeah.
What's Agbula's big takeaway from all this?
Well, his central message is that achieving your purpose requires building momentum. It's about combining that consistent action, the velocity, with the mass of knowledge, skills, and character.
Okay, so we got to have both. We got to have the substance and the movement.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've established that momentum is key. But how do we actually apply this to our own lives? I mean, it's one thing to talk about Usain Bolt, but I'm not exactly training for the Olympics here.
Right, right. No, this isn't just for elite athletes or, biblical figures. This concept of momentum, it applies to all of us no matter what our goals are.
So where do we even begin? Like, how do we start building this momentum in our own lives?
Well, Agboola suggests we start by looking inward. Like, what are you most passionate about? What energizes you? Because those passions, they can often be clues to our deeper purpose.
So like those passions are little breadcrumbs leading us to what we're meant to do.
Yeah, exactly. And once we have a better sense of our purpose, then we can start thinking about how to build that momentum towards achieving it.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, remember that analogy of mass and velocity.
Of course, yeah, the building of our strength and then putting it into action.
Right, exactly. So how can we increase our mass in the areas that are related to our purpose? What knowledge or skills do we need to acquire? Maybe it's reading books, taking courses, finding mentors who can guide us.
Like giving ourselves the tools we need to succeed.
Exactly. And then there's the velocity aspect. Are we consistently taking action towards our goals?
Right.
Even small daily steps can create incredible momentum over time.
It's like Rome wasn't built in a day.
Exactly. But life isn't always a smooth ride. We're gonna hit some bumps along the way.
Oh, for sure. There's always going to be obstacles and setbacks. So how do we stay motivated when things get tough? How do we keep that momentum going?
Well, Agboola, he talks about resilience and having a growth mindset. Those setbacks, they're not failures. They're opportunities to learn and grow.
Right.
Pick yourself up, dust yourself off, adjust your approach if you need to, and keep moving forward.
So it's like fall 7 times, stand up 8.
Exactly. And sometimes maintaining that momentum means being flexible. It's not about rigidly sticking to a plan, but being open to new information, making course corrections as we go.
So constantly evaluating, tweaking, and making sure we're still heading in the right direction.
Exactly. It's a dynamic process. And Agboola really brings this home with the review questions he includes at the end of the chapter.
Oh, yeah. What kind of questions does he ask?
Well, one that really stood out to me was, what significant thing have you been postponing or delaying because of procrastination, fear, or lack of momentum?
Oof, that one hits a little close to home.
Right. It's like he's calling us out on our own BS.
Yeah.
And then he follows it up with, what is your main objective or goal for this year? What deliberate steps or actions will you take to make sure you gain momentum and fulfill your dreams?
So he's really challenging us to get specific and take ownership.
He is. And of course, we can't forget about those classic Agboola quotes. This chapter is full of them.
Oh, I know. He always has such a way with words.
He does. One of my favorites from this chapter is, passion is a pointer to mission, and momentum is the guarantee that mission will be timely fulfilled. So we need both. We need that passion to ignite our purpose and the momentum to carry it forward.
Exactly. And this one really resonated with me. Understanding the seriousness of not moving forward aggressively and quickly is crucial, since it impacts not only us personally, but also future generations.
Wow, so our lack of momentum can actually have a ripple effect impacting others beyond ourselves.
Exactly. It's a reminder that we're not just living for ourselves. Our actions, they have the power to shape the world around us and impact future generations.
It's a lot to think about.
It is. But ultimately, I think this chapter is incredibly empowering. It's like he's reminding us that we all have the potential to create positive change. And it starts with us.
Like Agboola is saying, you have this assignment, this purpose, but you need momentum to truly fulfill it.
Yeah. Powerful stuff.
So as we kind of wrap up our deep dive into your assignment requires momentum, what really resonated with you most from this chapter? I think for me, it was that idea that momentum is a choice. It's not something that just happens to us. We actually create it through our actions and our decisions.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's like, it's empowering to realize we have that much control.
Yeah.
Agboola even uses that analogy of, an object in motion stays in motion.
Yeah.
And it's like, it takes some effort to get that object moving initially. But once it has momentum, it's so much easier to just keep it going.
That's such a good analogy. And it highlights why, building those positive habits and routines is so crucial. Because it's like you're creating a system that supports that momentum even when your motivation dips.
Exactly. It's like we're setting ourselves up for success by making those positive actions almost automatic.
Exactly. And remember how we talked about how momentum isn't just about achieving our own goals.
Right.
Agboola, he challenges us to think bigger, like what kind of impact are we making on the world around us?
Yeah, he's encouraging us to use our momentum for good, to create positive change that goes beyond ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, even those small acts of kindness or service, they can make a difference when we do them consistently.
I completely agree. It's about recognizing that ripple effect of our actions and striving to make a positive contribution.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up today's deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Okay.
What if Joshua had maintained that initial momentum throughout his leadership? How do you think things might have turned out differently? What could he have accomplished if he had kept that drive going?
That's a really interesting question. It really makes you think about the potential we all have when we harness that power of momentum, and direct it towards something meaningful.
Yeah, it's a reminder that we're not just living for ourselves.
Yeah.
Our actions have the power to shape the world around us and impact, future generations.
Absolutely.
So to all our listeners out there, let's go create some positive momentum. Embrace the challenge. Stay resilient and make a real impact.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And if you're hungry for more strategies for building momentum, well, Agula dives even deeper in the next chapter, and we'll be exploring that in our next deep dive. Until then, keep that momentum going.
Keep it going.